Well, here's our addendum to our live lesson. We didn't quite have time to get everything finished, and it's really important that you know these things. So let's begin with trophic levels. A trophic level is each step in the food chain. And so sometimes those trophic levels are shown through pyramids of energy flow. So it's one level moving to another. It again shows the way energy is traveling, just like it did with the food chain and the food web. If you look at this ecological pyramid, you'll see that producers are located at the bottom and some decomposers at the way bottom down there, followed by the herbivores that eat the producers, the carnivores that eat the herbivores, and then the bacteria for the decomposers at the top again. This is another extremely important thing that you need to know. Each trophic level acquires only 10% of the energy from the previous level, and the rest is given off as heat. So when we have a bunch of producers that absorb energy from the sun, and those are eaten by our primary consumers, only 10% of the original energy is spread to them. The rest is dispensed as heat as organisms engage in what's called cellular respiration. This is a combustion type reaction. And not all of the energy locked in the molecules gets shared with the living organism. So you can see that as we go up this pyramid, from our producers to our primary consumers to our secondary consumers and our last of all our tertiary consumers, that we're losing energy as we go up the pyramid. This is why we can't have as many secondary consumers as we do producers in an ecosystem. Another pyramid that you might see is a pyramid of biomass. Biomass indicates the amount of mass of living organisms at each level. And so here we have 900 kilograms of grasses, producers, our first trophic level, and then only 100 kilograms of mice, 50 kilograms of snakes, and 10 kilograms of owls. Again, you can see that just like the energy, the biomass reduces as we move up that pyramid. You might also see a pyramid of numbers, and this is telling us the actual numbers of organisms. Here we have over 5 million, very nearly 6 million producers to eventually only support 3 tertiary consumers. Here are some examples of these pyramids, and they usually follow a standard path like a pyramid, but not always. You might see something a little bit different. Pyramid of numbers along the first side. See, mostly grass, a lot more grass plants. Then we have rabbits, then we have foxes. Same thing with the pyramid of biomass and energy for this terrestrial or earth-based system. In the ocean, sometimes you'll see something a little bit different. There might be more zooplankton than phytoplankton. Zooplankton are more animal-like, and phytoplankton are actually producers that produce carbohydrates using the sun's energy. The same thing for the biomass, but the pyramid of energy still remains the same. The producers pass that on then to the next level, and the energy decreases by only 10% each time. What does this symbol stand for? You might have seen it in a lot of places. It's the recycling symbol. And recycling isn't something that just people do. Recycling occurs in nature. And there are 4 processes that recycle matter in an ecosystem: biological processes, geological processes, chemical and physical processes, and then humans also recycle matter in the ecosystem. We're going to begin with the water cycle. The water cycle is a kind of recycling that occurs naturally within ecosystems. And you've probably seen this one since you were rather young. Water evaporates from the oceans and then condenses into clouds. Then that water falls as rain or ice or snow, any kind of water that comes out of clouds as precipitation. Some of that water is going to run off and go back into the ocean. Some of it will be absorbed and go into the groundwater storage. And then that again eventually returns to the oceans, and the whole process continues. Water stays as water for the most part here Now, we're going to see that in some situations it's going to be broken down and used for other things. But this water just keeps going through this cycle over and over again. And the water you drink might have been the same molecule of water that a dinosaur drank many millions of years earlier. Now let's look at the nutrient cycles. The carbon cycle has received a lot of attention lately because atmospheric carbon dioxide gas has been blamed for climate change around the world. But the idea of carbon going through cycles within the ecosystem is something that scientists have known about for a long time, and it's a very important part of life on Earth. You can see, let's look at each of these individually. The green is the geological cycle. There's dissolved carbon dioxide in water, and then that can go into the sediments, goes through carbonate rocks, then it can dissolve and returns into the atmosphere as CO2 gas. CO2 will dissolve in the rainwater from the atmosphere and then evaporate back out into the atmosphere again. So there's part of the cycle. We also have the human and biological cycles here, which are more what people are looking at with regard to climate change. There's carbon locked up in the biomolecules of the trees and plants in forests and the grasses. And there's also carbon locked into things like oil and coal and natural gas. Those things, those fossil fuels, used to be plants long ago. Remember, the energy for all of these processes originally comes from the sun. So in the case of oil and gas and coal, that energy that's locked in those molecules originally came from the sun's energy as ancient plants photosynthesized and created carbohydrates. And then they were changed over pressure and time into natural gas, coal, and oil. When those substances are burned in a combustion reaction, like all combustion reactions, carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere in this case. And so the concern is that too much of that carbon dioxide is being released into the atmosphere through the burning of all these fossil fuels, and also through animals that are grazing and living and dying, and that's all the part of that biological process where this carbon dioxide gas is given off. So humans and natural biological processes are also continuing to release and absorb the carbon dioxide. When plants take in carbon dioxide into their leaves, like I said, and they take that carbon dioxide in during photosynthesis, they're rearranging those atoms and turning that into sugars, into glucose that other organisms eat. And so that carbon molecule could be in a blade of grass that was originally carbon dioxide gas in the air. And that blade of grass is eaten by a cow, which takes that glucose and uses it for energy in its own cells. And then human beings will kill the cow and eat it, and then they get the carbon. And then that carbon is breathed out as they breathe out carbon dioxide gas back into the atmosphere, only to be recycled over and over again. The nitrogen cycle is another important cycle. Nitrogen is required by plants to grow. You have nitrogen in the proteins in your body. And nitrogen, some of it occurs by fixation by lightning. Most of our air is not oxygen. Most of the air we breathe is nitrogen, and it's inert most of the time. The plants can't get nitrogen out of the air to use for protein. So what they do is they can absorb it in certain forms, and bacteria can convert that so that plants can use it. And so plants will work with that bacteria to fixate that nitrogen gas that they need. Nitrogen is also in fertilizers because, again, plants require it for their growth. Same kind of idea with the phosphorus cycle. Phosphorus is found in DNA and in the bones of animals. And so phosphorus is taken up by the primary consumers, the plants, reused by the consumers, and then it's released and excreted. There's phosphorus in the excrement, and it decomposes and goes back into the soil. And so this can be washed around and moved. Phosphorus is mined and used in fertilizer. As we know, if you put manure on plants, it's good for them. It's because it contains nitrogen and phosphorus. But all the extra that washes off could be dangerous. It could be a pollutant if it gets into the water. So all of these cycles work together. We didn't talk about the potassium cycle, but you get the general idea. And all of these are working together. The movement of one nutrient depends on another one. Okay, living organisms have been found in caves where there's no sunlight. What do you believe is the source of energy for these organisms? Now, we talked in class about ecosystems that are deep in the ocean where light cannot penetrate. And that is not usually the case with caves. A lot of caves have organisms that are going in and out of the cave, like bats will go in and out and catch mosquitoes and other bugs, and they go and sleep in the cave, and they form droppings, and those droppings can be eaten by other organisms. So caves don't necessarily have chemosynthesis like we saw at the bottom of the ocean. So the sun could still be a source of energy for those organisms. And bacteria can be one of those sources. Okay, and how do bacteria contribute in ecosystems in positive ways? We always tend to think of bacteria as being something bad, but they do contribute in positive ways. Bacteria fixate nitrogen and allow plants to take nitrogen in. They need that to grow. And that answers question C, what would occur if there were no bacteria in the soil? Plants would be unable to get the nitrogen that they need. Okay, that's the end of this particular lesson, the stuff that we missed and couldn't fit into our action-packed live lesson. I hope that this has been informative to you. Thank you again for your attention and for attending live lesson or watching that recording. And good luck on your lessons this week, and I will see you next Thursday. Bye.